Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we try to strip away the gilded facade of familiar narratives to uncover the compelling truths underneath. You know the story, right? The one whispered through generations of bedtime tales, blockbuster animations. The whole Disney princess myth. It's this dazzling vision of glittering gowns, effortless beauty, and that magical, clear, happily ever after. A very simplified, utterly romanticized fantasy that's captivated us for decades. But okay, let's unpack this. What if I told you that the actual lives of princesses throughout history, and maybe even the royalty or like key cultural figures in the indigenous societies, were far more intricate, more challenging, and honestly, infinitely more fascinating than any animated fairy tale?
It's absolutely true. And what's really fascinating is how those idealized images, while, beautiful, they both reflect and profoundly distort the historical realities. So today we're going to take a deep dive into centuries of royal life, mainly across Europe, and then we'll journey beyond that, exploring the, surprising truths about their meticulously structured daily routines, their often immense political power, profound personal struggles, and even the very clothes they wore. And we'll also explore how clothing serves as this incredibly powerful language, identity, resistance, worldview, and other complex societies too.
Right. And our mission today is really for you, our curious listener, to gain not just a quick look, but a genuinely thorough understanding of the intricate, often challenging, and surprisingly influential lives of these figures. We want to spark those aha moments, share specific examples that'll stick with you, and offer multiple perspectives to enrich your understanding, without feeling totally overwhelmed. Okay, so let's start by maybe knocking down some popular illusions. You might picture a princess waking up, birds singing, animals helping her dress, maybe a chat with talking furniture. Yeah, forget it. That whimsical Disney routine? It's just a universe away from the meticulously structured reality of a historical princess's day.
Oh, completely. I mean, take their education, for instance. It was rarely about, say, personal enlightenment or following a passion for learning like we think of it now. Instead, it was fundamentally a strategic investment, a practical tool, really, geared towards dynastic stability and, effective statecraft. In the medieval period, the curriculum was intensely pragmatic. Young princesses were thoroughly drilled in household management, the socially acceptable ways to dispense charity, and crucially, public affairs, politics, history even.
That's such a critical distinction. It wasn't about intellectual curiosity just for itself, right? It was about preparing them for a very specific destiny, especially those politically calculated marriages. And this training, it usually happened right there in the royal residence, often overseen by the queen herself, with specialized tutors brought in for specific subjects. So basically, princess school was less about personal growth and much more about forging these living diplomatic tools. Every lesson, Latin, charity, whatever, was the strategic investment in the kingdom's stability, turning young women into key gears in the state machine.
Exactly. And a really prime example from the Renaissance era is Queen Catherine of Aragon. She famously designed a formal Renaissance education curriculum for her daughter, Princess Mary Tudor, the future Queen Mary I. Now, this was pretty groundbreaking for England at the time. Mary was the first heiress apparent to get such comprehensive training, and the manual created for her, The Education of a Christian Woman, actually became hugely influential across Europe. It set a new standard.
Wow, and what a standard. Catherine of Aragon's own mother, the formidable Queen Isabella of Castile, had really set that precedent, making sure her daughters got a classical education that honestly rivaled male monarchs. They studied the Bible, classical Latin texts, authors like Prudentius, Seneca Latin historians, even civil and canon law. Catherine of Aragon herself became impressively fluent in Latin.
Absolutely. But it wasn't just the classical academic stuff. There was always this dual focus. Alongside the intellectual pursuits, they absolutely had to be proficient in traditional feminine skills. Things like music, dance, drawing, spinning, weaving, baking, sewing, all of it.
Yeah.
This whole package prepared them not for personal autonomy, not in our modern sense anyway, but as capable co-rulers, capable partners, making sure their education served the family and the kingdom.
Okay, fast forward to the Enlightenment period, and now we see royal women really starting to emerge as significant intellectual figures, patrons of arts and sciences too, often despite huge institutional barriers, like universities being closed to women. Caroline of Ansbach, she's a fantastic example here. She actively engaged with leading cultural intellectual figures of her time. She championed advances in art, sciences, medicine.
Caroline of Ansbach really does stand out. Her progressive views, her direct action. She took a leading role in popularizing variolation, that early form of immunization against smallpox. Famously, she had it tested first on 6 condemned prisoners from Newgate Prison who all survived, thankfully, proving its safety. And then, in a really bold move that silenced a lot of skeptics, she had her own children. Amelia, Caroline, and Frederick inoculated the same way. Voltaire himself publicly praised her for it, called her a benevolent philosopher, credited her with encouraging the arts and the well-being of mankind.
That's truly remarkable, that level of personal commitment to public health from a royal figure. And she wasn't alone in these intellectual pursuits. Princess Theresa of Bavaria, born much later, 1850, she became a distinguished ethnologist, zoologist, botanist, even a travel writer. Mastered an incredible 20 languages, earned honorary academic titles. Pretty impressive, given universities were still largely closed to women then.
And these intellectual efforts, they weren't just, personal hobbies. They served a purpose. They projected this image of an enlightened modern monarchy. It significantly enhanced their soft power in a time of shifting politics. And beyond just formal education, royal women were consistently influential patrons. Learning, literature, they leveraged their wealth, their influence, commissioned historical writings, poetry, asserting royal authority, subtly shaping cultural narratives. We saw that with early figures like Queens Emma and Edith too.
So their days weren't simply lessons in intellectual stuff. Courtly duties, domestic management, that was a massive administrative burden. Christine de Pisan's Treasure of the City of Ladies from 1399 gives us a glimpse into a medieval princess's routine. Starts with morning mass, dispensing charity, then the rest of the day often consumed by governmental affairs with counselors.
Yeah, and for Renaissance noblewomen, especially those managing huge estates as chatelaines, the female heads of household, the administrative load was truly immense. They oversaw countless social functions, parties, balls, dinners, managed huge teams of servants. Direct cooking, though, absolutely beneath their station. That was for the lower ranks.
Then you get to the 18th century, especially courts like Versailles, and the routines become almost elaborately ceremonial, like a constant performance. Parts of their morning routines, dressing, breakfast, actually done in public, courtiers present, watching. A lot of their days spent in, polite leisure gossiping, cards, strolling in the palace gardens. But even that leisure was performative, watched, ruled by strict etiquette.
Right. And it's quite telling, vigorous physical exercise, generally not seen as seemly or appropriate for high-ranking ladies then. It led to incredibly sedentary lives. Some historical sources even quipped rather wryly that many became very obese from all the sitting in huge court gowns and the lack of physical activity. Evenings were just packed. Court entertainments, formal dinners where they might literally just watch the king eat, interminable balls, high-stakes gambling, often stretching way past midnight.
It sounds utterly exhausting, actually, a life just constantly on stage. By the 19th century, we do see a slight shift. A bit more privacy, a semblance of normalcy, maybe. The formality still ruled. Victorian princesses might rise at a more reasonable hour, bathe, pray, have breakfast maybe with their children or ladies in waiting. Still had official lessons, meetings. Queen Victoria's daughters learned history, languages, art. Princess Louise even became an avid sculptor.
Yeah, afternoons might involve tea, horseback or carriage rides, maybe some charitable visits. Many cultivated artistic hobbies too, painting, music, writing letters in the quieter hours. Evenings, while still structured, were often more private, spent with family, close friends, playing piano, parlor games. Grand balls were just for special occasions, not every single night. Allowed for a degree of personal time that was missing earlier.
So when we think about all this, what does it really mean for how we see a princess's daily freedom? It seems far less spontaneous, much more regimented than any storybook suggests, right?
Absolutely. If you connect it to the bigger picture, it just highlights that their time, morning to night, was tightly managed by this complex web of etiquette and expectations. Their work was upholding their rank, projecting that public image. It's a world away from modern ideas of personal autonomy. They really embodied duty in every sense.
Okay, moving beyond just their daily lives, let's really challenge this idea of princesses as just passive, pretty ornaments. These women were far, far more than that. They were significant, active forces in history, often wielding huge political power, sometimes behind the scenes, sometimes quite openly.
Indeed. Royal marriages, for example, overwhelmingly strategic, almost never about personal affection, but driven by critical political, dynastic, or economic needs. They were primary tools of statecraft, meticulously designed to start or reinforce peace, facilitate national or international power plays. A princess was, quite literally, often wedded off to a prince or king of a rival country as part of a peace treaty. They were essentially living, breathing treaties or alliances.
You see this so starkly with Gisela of Bavaria. likely married at 10 years old to Stephen of Hungary. This union was vital for a peace treaty, and Gisela herself was instrumental in Hungary's Christianization, its westernization. Even though Hungary was seen as this wild new kingdom by her Bavarian neighbors, what a huge responsibility for a child.
Or think about Margaret of Scotland, betrothed as a child to Louis, the Dauphin of France. Her marriage was specifically arranged to renew the Franco-Scottish alliance during the brutal Hundred Years' War. Marie Antoinette's famous marriage, also a key diplomatic maneuver, designed for reconciliation between France and Austria, those long-standing rivals. In every case, these young women weren't just brides. They were diplomatic pieces, crucial living treaties or alliances in the high-stakes game of European power.
And beyond just being marital instruments, many medieval princesses and queens rose to incredible prominence, played pivotal, direct roles in public life, actively engaging in politics, state affairs, often challenging deeply entrenched male-dominated governance. Olga of Kiev, for instance. She daringly took over rule of Kievan Rus' after her husband's assassination, showed remarkable cunning and, sometimes brutal force in avenging his death and consolidating her own power.
And incredibly, she later tirelessly promoted Christianity throughout modern-day Ukraine, for which she was eventually canonized as a saint. Tamar of Georgia, another powerhouse, declared co-ruler as a teenager by her father, a truly defiant act against patriarchal norms then. She swiftly asserted her dominance against powerful clan leaders and ushered in what's remembered as a golden age for Georgia, clearly groomed for leadership from a young age.
Then there's Gromslava Ingvarovna, Rus's princess, became a crucial regent for her one-year-old son in Poland after her husband was murdered. She successfully defended his claim to the throne, influenced economic matters specifically by reestablishing Krakow under Magdeburg law, which was a big deal for urban development, and even engaged in religio-cultural patronage, building a church. Her extensive political activities are incredibly well documented through surviving charters, shows her real impact.
Caroline of Ansbach, who we mentioned earlier, also known for her immense political influence, exercised both directly and through her trusted minister, Robert Walpole. She held 4 significant regencies during George II's frequent trips to Hanover, and she's widely credited with strengthening the House of Hanover's often shaky position in Britain during a period of real political instability. She held strikingly liberal opinions picked up from her mentor, Sophia Charlotte of Prussia, supported clemency for Jacobites, freedom of the press, even freedom of speech in Parliament. Quite progressive for her time.
And, of course, the legendary Catherine the Great of Russia. Famously seized power by overthrowing her own husband, Peter III. Reigned as empress for decades, undertook massive modernization and westernization efforts. It's just so clear these women were far from passive figures stuck in gilded cages. They were strategic, powerful, and directly shaped the destinies of nations.
Which really brings up an important question. How did they manage to wield such influence in what was, let's face it, an overwhelmingly male-dominated world? Their intelligence, their agency, their remarkable adaptability, these were absolutely key. They directly shaped national destinies, fundamentally challenging that ingrained idea of exclusively male governance. And beyond direct rule, royal women consistently used their wealth and influence to commission, collect, support the arts, serving both political and personal goals.
Right, like Queen Elizabeth I, strategically commissioning portraits to craft her public image, that visual narrative of her reign. Marie Antoinette's patronage supporting artists like Elizabeth Vigée-Lebrun, fostering talent. And empresses funding grand architectural projects, not just showing off wealth, but leaving a lasting legacy in the landscape.
And their influence went beyond the arts, too. They were instrumental in promoting, supporting advances in science, medicine, trade, industry. Catherine the Great, again, a groundbreaking figure in public health, first person in Russia inoculated against smallpox in 1768. A bold, visionary move that saved countless lives and showed her commitment.
And if you look at contemporary monarchies, princesses still engage in extensive charitable work, addressing crucial issues like child welfare, mental health, contributing to their image as compassionate figures, role models. Princess Anne in the UK, for instance, president of Save the Children UK since 1970, involved with over 300 charities, countless overseas tours. It shows this enduring legacy of royal service. Okay, let's shift focus now from the grand palaces and political chessboards to another arena where royal power and identity were meticulously crafted and well displayed, the wardrobe. You might just think of it as fancy dresses, but the attire of European princesses, it was way more than just clothing. It was this potent visual language, signal status, wealth, political identity, mirroring huge shifts in power, economics, cultural exchange. It wasn't just about looking good, was it?
Oh, far from it. In the early medieval period, royal dress was actually pretty simple, often looked a lot like the practical gear of the warrior class. But as kingdoms stabilized, wealth grew during the High Middle Ages, royal clothing became significantly more elaborate. It served as this overt, visible display of status and power.
Exactly. Queens adopted long silk gowns, rich trimmings, embellished tunics. Priestesses wore tighter dresses, expensive trimmings, varied hairstyles, often stylish veils, caps. You can clearly see the influence of opulent Byzantine, Oriental, Moorish styles creeping in as trade routes opened up and cultural exchange deepened.
Then, Renaissance England really embraced fashion as an explicit display of wealth and social standing. Women's gowns featured fitted, boned bodices, intricate layering underskirts, petticoats, overdresses, all meticulously crafted from luxurious fabrics like silk, velvet, brocade, often adorned with elaborate, painstaking embroidery.
Queen Elizabeth I's legendary extravagant outfits were particularly influential. They set the absolute standard for court fashion. The Spanish farthingale created that distinct cone shape, giving gowns immense volume. French and gable hoods were popular headwear, every single element designed to project authority, wealth, a unique identity.
The Baroque era then just escalated this trend to extreme lavishness. Think ornate lace, sumptuous velvet, dramatic silhouettes. Marie de Medici's wardrobe really epitomized this opulence. Heavily embroidered gowns, dramatic headdresses, intricate lace. It was like visual armor to solidify her status in a tumultuous court. And Catherine de Braganza, the Portuguese princess who married King Charles II, she had a lasting impact on English Baroque fashion. Popularized the mantua dress, that loose, open-fronted robe with a flowing train, along with billowing, vibrant full skirts and intricate lace details.
And here's where it gets really insightful. The Enlightenment period saw this gradual yet profound shift. While wide panniers, those rigid side hoops, they stuck around for the most formal court functions. Informal style started moving towards simpler, more flowing chemise dresses, inspired by classical ideals of simplicity that romanticized return to nature.
This is precisely where Marie Antoinette, often seen as a fashion icon, also got herself into hot water. Her adoption of the gaulle, or chemise à la reine, basically a simple white muslin dress, sparked significant outrage. It was seen as indecent, totally unbecoming for a queen. It blurred those traditional clothing distinctions between nobility and commoners, and by doing that, it fundamentally undermined notions of status, royal power. It shows powerfully that fashion wasn't just pretty clothes, it was a potent political weapon, capable of dismantling visual hierarchy, challenging the crown's legitimacy.
Wow. And speaking of iconic gowns and their powerful statements, Queen Elizabeth I's extravagant dress encrusted with pearls in the famous Armada portrait. That's such a powerful symbol of her power, her virginity, her nation's triumph. Grace Kelly's 1955 Oscar gown, that shimmering off-the-shoulder creation, didn't just win her an award, it solidified her status as Hollywood royalty way before her actual royal marriage. And her wedding dress, a masterpiece, still studied and copied today.
Princess Margaret's numerous elaborate evening gowns, often pushing the boundaries, were emblematic of her glamorous socialite status, her rebel princess persona. And Marie Antoinette's formal court dress from the 1780s lavish embroidery of plants, flowers, peacocks, pheasants on pale blue, pink, ivory satin. It's not just art. It's one of the very few surviving gowns definitively linked to her and her famed dressmaker, Rose Bertin. A tangible link to a pivotal era.
So when we look at this whole evolution, it's clear royal fashion was this carefully constructed visual language all its own. Spoke volumes about the wearer, their ambitions, the shifting social and political currents of their time. It was a statement, a strategy, a powerful symbol.
Precisely. Every stitch, every fabric choice, every silhouette could signal power, immense wealth, sticking to tradition, or even, like with Marie Antoinette, a kind of sartorial rebellion. It was truly a profound statement, both public and often deeply personal, reflecting broader cultural, political currents way beyond just looking nice.
Okay, beyond the fabric and the cut, there's this pervasive theme of a princess's beauty. And the often rigorous, sometimes extreme efforts needed to maintain that flawless royal image. Historical accounts are just full of examples of celebrated beauties. Mary Tudor, Henry VIII's younger sister, widely feted around Europe for her pale skin and good looks, considered one of the most attractive princesses of her time, a key asset in diplomacy.
Princess Joan of Kent was truly renowned, earned the name the Fair Maid of Kent, described as the most beautiful woman in all the realm of England. Empress Eugenie in the 19th century consistently lauded as a queen of beauty with not a single flaw, immortalized by top artists like Winterhalter.
Princess Alexandra of Denmark, later Queen Alexandra. Highly photogenic, a new concept then, and her perceived goodness was often highlighted as an influential quality. It suggests beauty was more than just physical features, extended to character. And Empress Elizabeth of Austria, Sisi, widely praised for her striking beauty and youthful figure, reportedly even outshone the actual bride at her own brother's wedding. That iconic painting of her in a white court ball gown, sparkling diamond stars woven into her legendary hair.
And of course, more recently, Grace Kelly, the Hollywood star turned Princess of Monaco, topped a poll of the most beautiful royals ever. But what's truly astonishing and often unseen is the immense personal cost of this celebrated beauty. Empress Elizabeth of Austria, Sisi, became intensely obsessed with maintaining herself as she aged, resorting to extreme, often utterly unconventional measures to preserve her appearance.
This is where it gets really unsettling. Her legendary knee-length hair required an insane amount of care, a grueling day-long washing process with raw eggs and brandy every 3 weeks. Beyond that, a 3-hour daily dressing ritual during which she'd meticulously study languages just to pass the time. Sounds like a full-time job just maintaining her hair.
Her diet and exercise routines were nothing short of compulsive, bordering on extreme, really. She maintained this remarkably teen girl slim figure. At 5'8", she hovered around 110 pounds, sometimes reportedly starving herself down to an alarming 100 pounds. Her afternoons were consumed by relentless physical activity, incredibly long hikes, up to 10 hours, vigorous horseback riding, even using gymnastic equipment installed right in her palace rooms, performing calisthenics, hanging from rings, quite unbecoming by traditional royal standards for a lady then.
And the evening treatments. This is where her dedication to beauty gets truly bizarre. Subjected herself to extreme beauty rituals, wearing facial masks lined with raw veal or crushed strawberries while she slept, or, even more disturbingly, raw veal masks held in place overnight with a leather mask. To keep her already impossibly tiny waist, reportedly just 16 inches, as small as possible, she wrapped her waist and hips in cloths soaked in cider vinegar or violet essence overnight. Even slept without a pillow on a rigid metal bed, all to maintain perfect posture, prevent wrinkles. Every morning, an icy cold shower. Every evening, a luxuriating olive oil bath. Just wow.
These extreme routines offer this really poignant glimpse into how utterly trapped Sisi felt by the pressures of her position, by her own relentless pursuit of an impossible ideal. One historian noted her extreme obsessive control over her body perhaps stemmed directly from her profound lack of control over her actual life at court, her marriage. Sisi herself famously said, "Life without beauty would be worthless to me." Her story sadly ended tragically with her assassination in 1898.
It's a stark reminder that even today, that pressure to conform to a specific look persists. There's a strange parallel to the Disney look requirements for modern theme park performers. They have to adhere to precise physical standards. Makeup, a specific silhouette, can be removed if they don't maintain it. Highlights the constant scrutiny, even if the stakes aren't quite as high as a royal court. And beyond just personal vanity, a princess's appearance often held significant political, social utility. A Victorian newspaper even suggested a pretty royal could help her husband at the moment of political crisis, implying a direct political function to her appearance.
Empress Eugenie certainly understood this. She strategically leveraged her celebrated beauty, her sharp fashion sense, to her immense advantage. Not only enhancing her own image, influencing other great ladies, but also directly supporting the French luxury goods industry, turning her personal style into an economic, political tool. Her appearance was a carefully curated symbol, a profound responsibility.
And then you find stories like Princess Isabella of Parma, born 1741, at the glittering 18th century Austrian court, praised for her refinement, looked like a storybook princess. But her inner life, far more complex, shadowed. Married at 18 to Archduke Joseph for dynastic duty, but secretly harbored this profound love for her sister-in-law, Archduchess Maria Christina.
Isabella was described as brilliant, deeply sensitive, often found the shallow court life just tedious. Their bond was incredibly intense. Spent hours playing music together, exchanging passionate, poetic letters. Isabella's confessions filled with longing like, "I cannot bear waiting to know my fate. I am madly in love. You're so cruel, but I cannot help myself," reveal this forbidden love that consumed her. And Maria Christina clearly reciprocated some of that intense affection based on their letters.
Yet, despite her inner turmoil, Isabella performed her princess role impeccably in public. Praised for grace, charm, maintaining that outward facade, but privately she struggled terribly. Deep depression, profound religious guilt over her same-sex love, called herself a sinner, morbid feelings, almost premonitions of her own early death.
Tragically, she died at just 21. Smallpox in 1763, after childbirth and multiple miscarriages. Maria Cristina was utterly devastated. Meticulously kept Isabella's letters, mourned for an unusually long time, shows the depth of their connection. Isabella's story is one no Disney movie would ever touch. A beautiful princess, admired by all, yet who lived with a dark secret of forbidden love and a profound sadness, reveals how real royal lives often had these shadowy corners hidden behind that polished facade of courtly perfection. It really challenges that notion of effortless beauty.
So what does this all mean for that fairy tale ideal of effortless beauty? It's just so clear it came with an incredibly heavy price, both physically and emotionally, for these women.
This raises a really important question. The relentless, often brutal pressure on these women to maintain a specific physical ideal. It demonstrates that perceived beauty was frequently an enormous burden, demanding extreme, sometimes profoundly unhealthy practices. The inner reality often starkly contrasted the outward glamour and imposed perfection.
Happily ever after. It's the ultimate fairy tale promise, right?
Yeah.
Sealed with a kiss, marriage to a prince, supposedly all based on pure love. But was this truly possible for historical princesses? We need to move way beyond that simple binary presented in fiction and explore the nuanced reality.
Yeah, in historical contexts, success in royal marriages was overwhelmingly defined by political stability and the absolutely critical production of heirs. Not necessarily by personal contentment or romantic love, yet it's also true that some royal marriages, despite their strategic origins, did indeed blossom into genuine affection, profound partnership.
Take William the Conqueror and Matilda of Flanders. Their 1053 marriage, initially unpopular, even led to excommunication because of distant kinship, but later described by chroniclers as very long and very, very happy. William was notably devoted to her. It's telling he became much more tyrannical after her death in 1083. Indicates her profound positive influence, her stabilizing presence.
Similarly, George II and Caroline of Ansbach in the 18th century shared a loving courtship that, despite its strategic foundation, evolved into a marriage described as both diplomatically smart and a lifelong romance. Their bond was so deep, George II made that truly poignant request: be buried alongside Caroline with instructions for their coffins to have removable sides so their dust could mingle after death. Powerfully signifies not just devotion, but a deep romantic bond that went beyond political necessity.
But yeah, more frequently, royal marriages presented huge personal challenges, led to lives far from idyllic. Mary Tudor, Henry VIII's younger sister, married to the aging, infirm King Louis XII of France as part of a peace treaty. Her time as queen lasted just 82 days until his sudden death. Highlights the tragically short-lived, impersonal nature of these cold political unions.
Princess Charlotte of Belgium's politically motivated marriage to Archduke Maximilian of Austria, which led her to become Empress of Mexico, was profoundly tragic. She returned to Europe mentally exhausted and heartbroken, utterly convinced he'd married her only for her huge family fortune, became increasingly paranoid, angry. Rumors of infidelity and illegitimate child swirled, ultimately led to a life marked by profound mental illness. So sad.
And then there's Joanna of Castile. Despite being intelligent, well-educated, she was deeply introverted, prone to severe mood swings. Her marriage to Philip the Handsome was marred by his numerous flagrant infidelities. Tragically drove her into deep depression, earning her that cruel name, Joanna the Mad. She was subsequently kept under house arrest for decades by her father and son to prevent her exercising political power. A heartbreaking illustration of how personal struggles could lead to profound political disempowerment.
Consider Chilonis, a Spartan princess. Forced into a political marriage with an older, violent man, but found solace, real affection with another. She reportedly chose death rather than be with her estranged husband when their armies clashed. Eventually married her lover, became queen. And Margaret of Scotland, who we mentioned, endured a complicated, unhappy relationship with Louis, the Dauphin of France. Their marriage wasn't expected to be consummated for years because they were so young. She was largely excluded from court politics, retreated into poetry, literature as an escape, died tragically young, childless. Whispers suggested she deliberately avoided pregnancy. Indicates a profound lack of personal fulfillment in her marital role.
Here's where it truly gets compelling. That idyllic happy ending from fairy tales. Far from a given. It was about so much more than just a kiss. The human experience of these royal women was far more varied, complex, and often heartbreakingly difficult.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it just underscores that historical success in royal marriages.
Yeah.
Almost always defined by political stability, producing heirs, not personal contentment or romantic love. The experiences of these princesses show happiness was far from guaranteed, ranged from short-lived unions, devastating mental health struggles, to outright political disempowerment, and even, in extreme cases, preferring death over an arranged spouse.
Yet, despite the rigid structures, the often severely limited personal agency, some princesses found remarkable ways to assert their individuality, pursue personal fulfillment, even by defiantly challenging societal norms. Joan of Kent, for example. Despite a controversial history of bigamy, she managed to win the heart of the Prince of Wales, eventually became the first Princess of Wales, suggests a notable degree of personal agency, sheer determination in her romantic life, carving her own path against the grain.
Princess Pauline von Metternich, a fascinating figure. Reportedly bored by her husband's numerous affairs, she actively sought fulfillment outside her marriage. Became a prominent, wonderfully colorful socialite, notoriously defied conventions, smoking cigars in public, famously challenged a countess to a duel with rapiers, embodied this vibrant spirit of personal rebellion against the constraints of her era.
And in the 20th century, Princess Margaret earned that name, England's rebel princess, due to her controversial lifestyle, highly publicized love life. Frequently challenging traditional royal norms, constantly filling gossip columns with her audacious choices. Christine de Pizan, a remarkable 14th century intellectual, after her husband died, chose a highly unconventional path. Ventured into writing professionally to provide for her family, defied strict societal norms for women then, found profound fulfillment independence in her literary pursuits, became one of the first professional female writers.
Amazing. Queen Christina of Sweden, reigned 1626 to 1689, could genuinely be described as a real-life prototype of a Disney rebel princess, or rather, queen. Ascended the throne as a child, later shocked all of Europe by rejecting nearly every expectation of her gender, her royal role. Notoriously dressed in men's clothing, adamantly refused to marry, surrounded herself with art, learning, female favorites, brilliant fluent in 9 languages, utterly unwilling to be anyone's dutiful wife, eventually abdicated her throne rather than conform.
Wow. And she openly had passionate relationships with both men and women, something essentially unmentionable, scandalous in the 17th century. Upon abdicating, she defiantly cut her hair short, donned a sword, and quite literally rode off to pursue her own path. Sought intellectual freedom in Rome. In her own time, widely maligned as eccentric, even crazy, but she lived this truly anti-princess life, driven by radical self-determination, intense intellectual passion, centuries ahead of her time. Left a legacy of defiance, independent thought.
And in a rare, genuine storybook twist, Archduchess Maria Christina of Austria, the beloved sister-in-law, confidante of Isabella of Parma, became the only one of Empress Maria Theresa's many daughters allowed to marry for true love. Despite her sister's political marriages, Maria Christina pleaded passionately to wed Prince Albert of Saxony, a man she genuinely loved, and remarkably convinced her formidable mother to consent using tactful advice from Isabella of Parma's poignant last letter.
And they went on to have a truly happy, deeply devoted marriage. Shared interests in art, built a celebrated collection together. Even tragedy, the heartbreaking loss of their only child, didn't break their bond. Remained loving companions well into middle age. Her life ended more peacefully, was unusually content for a royal lady of her era. Shows a chosen path could lead to fulfillment.
Another sort of quasi-fairy tale figure who found remarkable fulfillment on her own terms was Queen Marie of Romania, born Princess Marie of Edinburgh, 1875, granddaughter of Queen Victoria. Became crown princess, then Queen of Romania. Esteemed for her beauty, charm, had suitors from across Europe's courts. Though an arranged marriage at 17 to Crown Prince Ferdinand, Marie poured her energy, considerable intellect into her new country, and eventually, quite genuinely, won the love of the Romanian people.
During World War I, she became a national hero. Earned that enduring nickname, Mother of the Wounded, working tirelessly as a Red Cross nurse, personally caring for injured soldiers right on the front lines. Fearless, walking among soldiers in blood-stained hospitals, refusing gloves because, as she famously said, all the soldiers kiss my hand and I cannot let them kiss a rubber glove. Her dedication was utterly inspiring.
After the war, played an absolutely key diplomatic role at the 1919 Paris Peace Conference. Impressed international statesmen with her sharp intellect, grace. Successfully argued for the union of new territories to Romania, helping secure its modern borders. One astonished observer noted, quote, "By her charm, beauty, and ready wit, Marie could obtain anything she desired. She leveraged her personal qualities for national gain."
In 1922, Marie and Ferdinand crowned in this splendid ceremony as monarchs of Greater Romania. Marie wearing a specially crafted golden crown, a bejeweled cloak, a scene truly out of a fairy tale, but one she had earned through unwavering devotion, hard work. Enjoyed genuine adoration from her people. Undertook a grand tour of the U.S. in 1926, greeted like a movie star. Testament to her charisma, hard-won popularity.
In her memoir, she captures this profound connection so eloquently. My people and I, we understood each other. They idolized not just a crown, but a being that they had come to understand. The foreign princess was no longer alien, she was theirs. Demonstrates this poignant, profound fulfillment beyond a simple fairy tale marriage, born from genuine engagement, mutual respect.
So, what's the broader takeaway here? That happily ever after sometimes looked vastly different from the storybooks, and often required immense courage, strategic maneuvering, and unwavering determination.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it demonstrates vividly that genuine fulfillment for these women wasn't always found within traditional roles. It often required immense personal strength, strategic maneuvering, and sometimes outright rebellion to forge one's own destiny and leave a truly meaningful legacy, redefining what it meant to be royal.
Okay, we've unveiled the power woven into the very fabric of European royal life. Gowns dictated status, beauty was a political tool. But what happens when that royal or influential identity isn't defined by crowns, castles, but by ancestral lands, deep spiritual beliefs, a profound history of resistance? Let's now journey far from European courts to southern Abya Yala, where clothing and adornment tell profound stories of identity, spirituality, survival, in ways that make those glittering gowns seem almost simplistic by comparison. It's truly a deep dive into another world of meaning.
Precisely. We're talking about Southern Abya Yala, a powerful term meaning land in its full maturity in the Guna language. It's a concept used by indigenous philosophers, activists to consciously oppose the ethnocentric term America. It profoundly sets the direction for indigenous self-determination, human rights, represents the multifaceted responses of these communities to the relentless encroachment of global markets on their environments, resources. Despite significant human rights advancements, the very existence of these communities is, once again, currently threatened.
So here, clothing and adornment aren't just about fashion or status like we discussed with European royalty. They are truly living languages. Embodying millennia of cultural knowledge, resilience, they beautifully illustrate the aesthetics, artistic diversity of indigenous creativity. On a practical level, yeah, they protect from cold, heat, conceal, or attract glances, indicate crucial group affiliation.
And their profound symbolic potential is truly remarkable. These garments, adornments, they mirror complex worldviews, intricate power relations, evolving economic situations, often making historical developments visibly tangible. What's fascinating here is how universal the concept of clothing as identity marker really is, but how profoundly different the specific expressions, the underlying philosophies can be, often tied intimately to spiritual beliefs, the very land itself.
Let's maybe start with the Kayapo, also known as Mbengoku. They live on the Rio Xingu in northeastern Brazil. Famously known for political protest, often powerfully accompanied by vibrant body painting, splendid adornments. They earned an early reputation for aggression during colonial contact, a trait they later strategically channeled in rallies for rainforest preservation, projecting this image of fierce protectors of their ancestral lands.
Their leaders, figures like Raoni Matukire and Paulinho Payakan, gained significant international attention. United rival indigenous groups for a global campaign against the devastating Altamira Dam in the early 90s. Even got support from allies like Sting. Tragically, Paulinho Payakan passed away from COVID-19 in June 2020, a significant loss for the indigenous rights movement.
The manufacture and use of their adornments, governed by incredibly strict ritual rules, the very right to make, wear, even use the raw materials, is ritually bequeathed to specific people, requires support or permission from others in return. There's this deeply held belief materials are imbued with inherent power, specific attributes, transferred directly to the wearer, makes these rights precious privileges, demands both perfect craftsmanship and exceptional individual artistic creativity.
Their ear and lip ornaments, for example, carry profound symbolic meaning derived from the fundamental concepts of listening and talking. Listening is directly equated with absorbing knowledge, wisdom. Children's earlobes, pierced after birth, repeatedly widened through ritual process to foster learning, creating what's described as a symbolic second auditory canal. Wooden plugs for every day, more elaborate feather and mussel shell plugs for special rituals. Similarly, lip ornaments only for boys believed to accentuate speech, crucial for leaders who are exclusively men in their society. It's an interesting cultural evolution that large lip ornaments are less popular among young men today. Shows how even deeply symbolic traditions adapt.
The mussel shell necklace is particularly intriguing. Involves a remarkably time-consuming process. Grinding uniform mussel shell pieces, meticulously threading them. Wearing them requires specific ritual privileges, exceedingly rare, precious, bequeathed to only a select few relatives. popular among bachelors, a powerful visual signal to impress women. However, due to the shell's strong odor, associated spiritual power, wearing them is fraught with danger. People conscientiously refrain when ill or when close relatives are ailing. Pauline Opiacon himself confirmed an exhibited necklace was made by his father, Kanyo. Links the object directly to family lineage, specific ritual knowledge. A missionary, Protasio Frico, documented rapid cultural change in a Xikrin village before 1965, led to significant discord as some adapted to Brazilian society. Illustrates the profound impact of external contact on traditional practices.
Moving to the Shipibo Conibo of Peru, along the Rio Ucayali. Their entire reality is intricately interwoven with spiritual patterns known as kene. These patterns believed to become visible when psychoactive plant substances like ayahuasca are consumed. They describe these patterns as broad lines, kanoa, supporting the world's structure, and thin lines, kine, associated with humans, powerful spirit beings like the great boa. It's a synesthetic phenomenon experienced as visible patterns, linked to curing songs, even specific fragrances.
Their environment, sadly, faces dire threats. Rampant deforestation, encroaching agro-industry, climate change, oil concessions, all jeopardize their traditional subsistence way of life. Tourism also brings this complex mix of opportunities, challenges. Thriving arts crafts trade, yeah, but ayahuasca has unfortunately become a fashion drug for outsiders. Their ritual specialists, Ananya shamans, increasingly treating foreign clients, sometimes neglecting their vital role within their own communities, led to a widening social gap, a struggle to maintain cultural authenticity.
Their ceremonial pottery, anichomo, another profound example of worldview made manifest. Vessels crafted over several weeks, used for alcoholic beverages during rituals, depict the intricate tiers of the cosmos. Unpainted lower third symbolizes the hostile lower water world. Widest part is the border to the upper world, territory of the great boa coiled around the human world. Shoulder features the sky's structure, supernatural dwellings. Neck is the highest cosmic sphere, apex of awareness, home of supreme beings like the hummingbird spirit, which specialists visit to learn patterns or negotiate with spirits. It's not just a pot, it's a map of their spiritual universe.
Wow. Their women's wraparound skirts, kitanti, beautifully embroidered with those kine patterns. Inspired remarkably by piranha teeth, shows how deeply nature influences their aesthetic spiritual world. Dolls illustrate typical attire. Men's tunics, tari, headbands, maidi, neckbands, tioti, nose ornaments. Women's kitanti, necklaces, earrings, nose ornaments, and unusually married breastfeeding women often have upper bodies painted, not covered.
It's also worth noting the bracelets, jonxes, women formerly gave men as handmade love gifts, weaving personal affection into their material culture. These intricate details vividly show how deeply art, daily life, cosmology are interwoven with social practices.
Okay, next, let's explore the Maya in Guatemala. Traditional costumes powerfully express both common features and subtle differences among Maya groups. Yet these styles are also undergoing pronounced change. While strengthening community bonds, they can also paradoxically cause marginalization, transforming with shifts in belonging, experiences of isolation, alienation.
Their shared culture remembrance regarding the horrors since the colonial era is absolutely critical to understanding their present. Continuing discrimination led to powerful solidarity, the rise of the Pan-Maya movement from the mid-90s after Guatemala's protracted peace process. The impact of the Dirty War, the armed conflict from the 60s to the 90s against the indigenous population, brutally suspected of supporting guerrillas, was truly devastating. A staggering 80% of the 200,000 victims were Maya.
The trauma of this conflict profoundly impacted their cultural expression. Regional costume styles often blended due to mass flight displacement, or deliberately modified to obscure origins, a heartbreaking survival strategy. It was only with the 1996 peace agreements that constitutional protection for indigenous peoples' cultures finally became enshrined, acknowledging Guatemala's pluriculturality, multi-ethnicity, multilinguality. Raises a fascinating question. Can ethnic lines blur due to trauma, migration, without cultural identities fundamentally disappearing?
The huipiles, those handmade women's tops, perhaps the most important component of Maya costumes, meticulously made on waist looms. Everyday huipiles differ from those for special occasions, festivities, mourning. Mourners' huipiles, often dark blue. This seemingly simple garment carries immense historical personal weight, a tangible link to identity, a record of both joy and profound sorrow.
Moving on to the Guna people of Panama in Gunayala, a remarkable model for indigenous groups worldwide due to their successful resistance against Panamanian police in 1925, led to autonomous administration for their territory since the 1938 peace treaty. Their self-governance is a testament to their strength, determination.
A hugely important accomplishment for the Guna, re-establishing women's right to wear traditional handmade mola blouses, morak. through which Guna women are believed to represent Mother Earth herself. The myth of Nabag-Uri discovering nature's patterns in dreams is seen as the divine origin of mola designs. These intricate patterns draw inspiration from nature, everyday utensils, ancient myths, political events, even, surprisingly, television shows, showcasing a vibrant, adaptive tradition.
Molas also hold immense economic significance. Guna women become vital family supporters, producing these beautiful molas, sold worldwide, making them powerful markers of cultural identity and economic success. However, their delicate balance with nature is challenged by modern climate change. Rising sea levels threatening islands, decreasing fish populations, growing plastic waste problem, pushing their traditional way of life to the brink.
These molas have also adapted to buyers' tastes over time. For example, soldier-in-a-tank motifs emerged from contact with U.S. soldiers during Panama Canal construction, WWII. Made them more saleable, became a major source of income from tourism since the 60s. Patterns like Guligar, mimicking hermit crab tracks, are ancient geometric designs. Older specimens show reduction in colors, details over time, while Mola botanica is directly inspired by medicinal plants processed by traditional specialists. This blending of ancient tradition with contemporary influences highlights their resilience, ingenuity.
Mola blouses evolved from originally painted body patterns to bast fiber clothing, then sewn cotton fabric. The multi-week handmade process results in intricate blouses combined with wraparound skirts, elaborate beadwork, colorful scarves, striking gold jewelry, nose rings. Interesting that the loose fit of some older blouses suggests earlier styles compared to modern contoured fits, reflects an evolving tradition, not static.
Finally, let's turn to the Mapuche, people of the earth, in Chile. Renowned for long, incredibly successful resistance against both Inca expansion and later Spanish conquest. Strategically adopted elements from adversaries like horse riding, animal husbandry, which then significantly influenced their clothing, jewelry, integrating new tools into their existing culture of resilience.
Following Chilean independence, Mapuche faced subsequent challenges. Annexation of territory, widespread land grabs, over-indebtedness, voluntary land sales, immense economic pressure, tragic breakup of families. In response, they've actively founded political parties to advocate for their rights.
While the Ley Indigena of 1993 granted some rights bilingual education, radio programs the Chilean constitution still doesn't acknowledge their special status as a distinct people. Furthermore, ILO Convention No. 169, 2008, International Regulations for Indigenous Rights, hasn't been fully transposed into applicable national law. Compounding this, the anti-terrorism law relic from Pinochet's dictatorship still controversially applied to Mapuche protesters, leading to non-transparent, arbitrary court proceedings. Highlights an ongoing struggle for justice, recognition despite formal legal changes.
Despite these immense challenges, the Mapuche remain one of the largest indigenous groups in South America, 1.5 million people, continue to maintain distinctive cultural features, unique language, strong family religious bonds, exquisite craftwork wool, silver, leather, wood. These cultural expressions aren't just decorative, they are vital acts of cultural continuity.
Their jewelry, for example, far more than just beauty or wealth display, powerfully symbolizes femininity, connects people with deep-seated beliefs, mythology, emphasizes profound connection to nature like the moon, associated with silver, symbolizing femininity, fertility, jewelry, critically important in rituals, providing protection, blessing, guidance for agricultural activities, making it a living, sacred art form.
Cloak pins, tupu, used to fasten women's shawls. Unmarried women traditionally wear them on both shoulders, married women only on the right. Conveys social status through a seemingly simple detail. The poncho, in men's costume, a significant prestige indicator. The more sophisticated the weaving, the higher the standing of both the female weavers, whose skill is honored, and the wearers. Knowledge of textile production deeply linked to belief. Women singing or praying for successful outcomes during weaving.
The drum, kultrum, distinctive rattle drum used in religious curing ceremonies, serves as the very voice of the Machi, the shamaness. Its cross-shaped lines symbolize profound references: earth, cosmos, cardinal directions, sun, seasons, inquiries to deities, also alluding to the moon. Items intentionally placed inside the drum parts of silver jewelry, grains, metal, glass reveal its former ritual use, unlike drums made purely for sale, indicates its sacred history.
Murals frequently feature a machi with her drum, the stake for the Ingleton ritual. Machi often called to their vocation by powerful dreams or surviving severe illness. Enter a trance during healing ceremonies. Machitan. Consulted before important undertakings. Demonstrates their central community role. Dolls illustrate men's costume with the poncho's prestige, women's costume with the rectangular, patternless shamal, silver jewelry, headband, and the versatile Kapulvik cradle board. Carried on back or front for breastfeeding, suspended like a cradle. Also vital to note. Mapuche women advocate equal rights, recognition for their work, but critically, not abolishment of gender-specific labor. Seeking equality within traditional roles, not necessarily a Western redefinition. So, what's the broader takeaway here? It's truly amazing how deeply clothing and adornment can be embedded in a culture's very survival, its worldview, its ongoing story, acting as a profound testament to resilience.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights that these aren't merely decorative items. They are rich narratives, tangible records of resistance, vital components of identity, spiritual understanding, all in the face of immense external pressure, historical trauma. These cultures remind us clothing can be as powerful as any crown.
Yeah. And as we engage with these incredible artifacts, the stories they tell, it's just crucial to acknowledge how they came to be in many museum collections, especially from a modern perspective. Brings us to some complex, necessary ethical questions in anthropology.
Right. Let's reconsider Princess Therese of Bavaria, the ethnologist, zoologist, botanist who compiled those extensive ethnographic collections. While her usual method acquiring contemporary objects directly from makers is, from a modern ethical view, largely unobjectionable, her acquisition of pre-Columbian objects raises significant concerns.
Interestingly, she herself publicly criticized grave looting as impiety. Yet, paradoxically, personally collected human skulls found lying on the ground. Even hired professional treasure hunters to excavate a complete mummy bundle wrapped in fabric, crouched position along with its grave goods in Ancon, Peru. Similarly, a textile head from another mummy bundle, a false face, also has what's called obscure provenance, meaning its exact origin, how it was acquired, aren't clearly documented. Often indicates questionable collection practices.
Another sobering example comes from the early 19th century Brazil explorers, Spix and Martius. While they acquired single-use mask costumes, discarded by communities after rituals, their journey also involved disturbing acts of human trafficking. Martius, for instance, became the owner of several children. Tragically, only 2 survived the arduous trip to Munich, only to die within months. Despite contradictory versions of the purchase, highly unlikely these children's consent was obtained. This raises an absolutely critical question for us as we engage with these collections. While these artifacts offer invaluable insights into diverse cultures, histories, we must critically examine the historical circumstances of their acquisition. We need to openly acknowledge the often violent, exploitative colonial structures that enabled their collection. It's a complex, deeply necessary part of understanding the full, sometimes uncomfortable story behind these objects and the cultures they represent.
That's a powerful, sobering reminder. History's never simple. Even in the noble pursuit of knowledge, understanding, there can be these deeply troubling ethical shadows. Forces us to pause, truly think about the human stories, the injustices, lost voices, often behind these fascinating artifacts. Hashtag check it, hashtag outro. So we've journeyed through the intricate lives of European princesses. Peel back that fairy tale facade to reveal regimented duties, significant political power, complex personal struggles, the symbolic language of their elaborate fashion. And we've also taken a profound deep dive into the vibrant world of Abya Yala, where clothing and adornment tell rich, layered stories of identity, spiritual connection, enduring resistance in the face of modern challenges, deep historical injustices. What stands out to you after this deep dive? It's just profoundly clear that whether royal by birth or cultural designation, these individuals navigated incredibly rich, challenging realities, often with remarkable agency, resilience. The truth, as we've seen, often far more nuanced and frankly far more compelling than any simplified tale.
Yeah, this truly raises an important question for all of us, doesn't it? In a world just flooded with information, idealized images, how do we discern the nuanced truth from the simplified narrative? By looking closely at the specific details, embracing multiple perspectives, we consistently find the real stories are often far more powerful, resonant than the myths they inspire. They remind us human experience in all its complexity is always worth the deep dive.
So the next time you encounter an idealized image, whether it's a glittering fairy tale princess or a striking cultural artifact, maybe take a moment. Ask yourself, what truly lies beneath that perfect surface? What deeper messages, what hidden struggles, or what profound triumphs might be interwoven into the very fabric of that story, just waiting for your own deep dive?